I'm Sam Taggart with Can't Knock This, host of the first ever Door-to-Door Con, bringing professional collaboration to the direct selling and door-to-door industry. Go register your seat for our event January 2018 at doortodoorcon.com.
Hey everybody, this is Sam Taggart with Can't Knock This and DDD Podcast, and I'm here with Bryan Jackson, and it's super fun, and I'm honored to actually be on this podcast with him because he has been my mentor for the last year and a half. We've worked together for the last year and a half. He is the president of sales at Solcius Solar and has over 11 years of entrepreneurship in this door-to-door space. He's done thousands of clear internet accounts where he launched the first 4G internet division of Pinnacle Security. He actually had this weird little stepchild, and he ran and blew that up, and they were like, whoa! Then he actually launched the solar division of Pinnacle that nobody really knew about, and launched and blew that up, and then started a company called Invictus Solar, and then he is one of the owners of Solcius Solar, and has an amazing journey of sales and entrepreneurship. In this podcast, we're going to focus mainly on entrepreneurship and what it takes to kind of start your own thing, and the goods and the bads and the do's and the don'ts. It's because a lot of people on this that are listening are probably saying, hey, I want to do a solar dealer or an alarm dealer or a satellite dealer or a pest dealer, or, you know, a lot of times it's like, at what point do I start my own thing, and what are the things that people don't tell you about when going into this, and things that we always assume and then it gets hit in the face. You know, it's just kind of uncovering some of the pain points and the goods and story of an entrepreneur. So super excited to have you on the show, Bryan.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Cool. So let's dive in. Tell us a little bit about your start. You have an interesting start into the door-to-door and this humbling experience. But
yeah. Well, I think first of all, we should talk about where we're at.
So if you're listening to this, we're sitting, if you're watching this, you're like, where the heck are you?
Yeah, this is pretty nice.
If you're listening to this, we're literally sitting on top of a mountain in the Phi Phi Islands in Thailand.
Yeah, just off of Phuket.
Yeah.
You can hear roosters crowing in the background, and there's monkeys all around us. And
yeah, literally.
overlooking the ocean.
I'm hoping that monkey doesn't come steal our camera mid-podcast. So if it does, if you're like listening to this and then there's some jumble, it's probably because a monkey took it. So
yeah. And being here, we're here because every year now Solcius does a service trip where we'll go to a different part of the world, and we'll try to do some kind of service for the local people. And this year we served the Hmong people here in Thailand, which was it was incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, just being able to be with them and help them and farming and doing some work. You know, we built a parking lot at one house, then we went and served at a school. And that's something you brought to Solcius, which has been really cool. And this is just a lot of fun to be able to do these trips.
Yeah, no, service is one of the most powerful things, especially when you can get outside of your own element and be like, wow, I'm grateful that I have shoes, and I'm grateful that I have a good meal to go to. You know what I mean? Like, it just kind of humbles you and helps you get new perspective. So that was powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. So you asked me about my story and what got me into door-to-door and entrepreneurship and all that kind of stuff. So just starting off, a little bit about who I am and my background is born and raised in Utah, and really was I love sports, was kind of my whole thing, my life. And my dad, my mom were all educators. It was really beaten into my head early on that in order to be successful, you really had to get a good education. So I worked hard in school, tried the very best I could, and then I also worked hard in sports, and I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship at Utah State and play football up there. And but the entire time, my parents were still continually beating in my head that, hey, you need to be focused on school. Football's great and all that, but school's where it needs to be. So I went through my bachelor's degree and got a business management degree. And then after that, I went on and I went back and I got a master's in business administration. So I got an MBA. And I remember all those years just really living very poor, you know, and if anybody's been through college, you know, you're not wealthy by any means. And when I was playing football, they wouldn't allow me to go out and work at the same time. It was an NCAA rule that you had to just focus and do football and school. And so I got married my first year in school. My wife and I were living off about $500 a month, which is crazy in itself.
Crazy, yeah. Logan, Utah.
Only
place it's possible.
So we were living off that, and I remember when I graduated thinking, I finally made it. Thinking that now I can go out and I can make the real money. And put out my application and my resume to several different big companies, and finally landed a job down in Utah County in American Fork in a company called True North Academy. And I went from $500 a month to making my first salary at about $65,000 a year. And I thought I was loaded. I was like, man, I finally have made it. This was back in about 2005, 2006.
Which is probably as much as your parents or administrators make.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was great.
Yeah.
And so what my wife and I did is what most people do when they finally get their first job is we went house shopping. And we went and bought a home in Saratoga Springs right on the lake. And for my wife, she thought she was in heaven, mainly because we had been from apartment to apartment, just one-bedroom apartments, little tiny places. We had 2 kids now at this time, so shared bedrooms, all that kind of stuff, to living on what we thought was a mansion on the lake. And started my job, and I'd get to work around 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning every morning, and I would go until about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. I would go home every night, and I was with my family. We'd have dinner, and it felt like it was a very comfortable lifestyle. But as I started going through that job, I started just having this little bit of frustration, feeling like I was stuck.
Yeah.
Because I always wanted to progress and move up. And if you've been in athletics, it's always a challenge, like, I want to be the best type of a thing. Mm-hmm. And I looked at that job, and my boss, who had been at that company, had been there literally 10 years, had tenure. And if I was going to be able to move up, I was just going to have to be with the company for a long, long time. End of the first year came, and I got my first raise, and it was like 1.5%. Yes. And I learned that standard. That's how it is in the industry. And I was working really, really hard. Well, I started to get a little frustrated because of that, knowing that it was going to take me a while to move up. And one of my buddies that I was working with, he had a friend who had started his own company. And I went and visited his company. It was a company where they were selling for Worldmark by Wyndham. I don't know if you've heard of them, but it's basically timeshares, vacation ownership. And they were booking tours for Wyndham resorts. And every time he booked a tour, he would make $150 to $200 for having somebody go and visit this timeshare location. And he had hired about 15 high school kids. And I went over and I visited his company. I was like, man, if he can do it, I feel like I can do this for sure. I've got an MBA. I should be able to do it, right? So I went over and I thought, I can do this. And my other buddy that was working with me, he and I kind of decided together, hey, let's do this together. And so we started saying, okay, let's make a plan. Let's start the company. And about a month from now, we're going to quit our job. Well, when you're going to quit your job, the risk that comes in that is I had a mortgage that I had to pay. I have a wife and kids at home that depend on my salary. And I'm nervous about her living in this home that she absolutely loves and now saying, hey, I'm thinking about quitting my job and I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to pay for this home anymore. So the only way to do it, though, was to take the risk and really jump all in. Fortunate for me, my wife was very supportive and she was willing to just support me. And I quit my job. I ended up putting my home up for rent because I didn't have money to pay the mortgage anymore with no salary coming in. And my wife and I moved to this little tiny home up in Trenton, Utah. You've probably never heard of it. It's got like 450 people in it. Okay. We moved to this little home where she grew up in because we wanted to save money on rent. It was about 1,000 square feet, something like that, out in a farm. So it was a farm home. And literally when I left that house with my wife, she bawled. She just cried. She's like, I can't believe we're doing this. The buddy that I was going to start the business with, he ditched me at the last minute.
You're like, I just rented my house.
He decided he got a job at a bank and was doubling his salary. He's like, I can't pass it up. So I'm all in at this point. And now it's just me. What I didn't tell you is I had only about $5,000 in savings that I'd been saving over the past year and a half working that job. So I had very, very little money. So we moved up to this farm home just to save money on rent. And I went and the first thing I did is I depleted my savings by going and getting a small office. And I set up a phone system and I started putting out ads to hire people really from Utah State University because I was up near the Logan area. And the response was amazing. I hired almost 40 people overnight.
You're like, how do I pay these people?
Nothing to pay them with, right? Because I have $5,000 in my name, and I've depleted all that in my savings.
Okay.
So then I said, I really got to save money, and I don't have gas to drive into work every day. So I had this little old bike. I rode my bike, into Providence, which is just south of Logan, and it's 45 miles from Trenton to Providence.
Wow.
And so I would typically wake up around 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'd get on the bike and I'd pedal for 2.5 hours till I got into the office. And then I think one of the myths, and I was telling you about this, that most entrepreneurs believe is that when you become your own boss, in a way you can make your own decisions and maybe life gets a little bit easier. It's just the opposite. You work long hours. Everything, all the success of the company at the start, at least, is all dependent upon you and what you're doing in your work ethic. So I ride into work all day long. I usually wouldn't leave until about 10:30 at night, and I'd get home about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning in pitch black, go to sleep for 4 hours, 5 hours, get up the next morning and do it all over again.
Wow.
So
100 miles a day on a bike.
Yeah.
That's insane. 5 hours.
Yeah. So funny enough, I got this little gym pass at I think it was Planet Fitness for $9 a month, and I never used the gym once. I literally went there, showered after riding my bike.
You showered at the gym?
At the gym.
It's like,
and I went to
I'm just
the
paying
office
for the showers.
That's exactly what it was. So it was a lot of work, and I think that the risk that I took is I knew when I hired those 35 people and I put them on the phones, and I got on the phones with them and started selling for Wyndham, that I had 2 weeks to make payroll because I had no money to pay them. So the company paid me once a week. Payroll comes over every 2 weeks. I had to make a sell in order to even pay my people. Otherwise, I'm closing the business.
Yeah.
So I wasn't about out going getting a website or doing all those things that most entrepreneurs feel like they got to do before they can get started. I just had to sell, and that was it to be successful. So luckily, the first day we fell on our face, didn't sell hardly anything. The second day we got it together, we started making some sales, and by the first week we had enough sales come in that I was able to pay my people the next week, and then continued on that path, and little by little we made it until the first year the business ended, and I looked back and I had doubled my revenue from what I was making at the salary job.
Wow.
And then the very next year I doubled it again. So it was I think the biggest thing I learned in that experience starting my first business is that the key to success for a company is you have to have revenue come in the door right away.
Yeah.
And so many people fail, and I've seen it time and time again, where they feel like I've got to go out and I've got to spend money to make money. I've got to set up the right website. I've got to get the right marketing brochures. I've got to get everything squared away so that I have this image, then I can start my business.
Huge.
And the reality is you just got to go out and make a sell. And if you can make a sell, then you can have money coming in, and that way you can keep your business going. And later on you can build those things.
Yeah.
But that's what I first learned in my first entrepreneurship experience.
Yeah, because had you spent the next 2 weeks trying to figure out marketing, you would have not made payroll, made a fool of yourself, and had to fire a bunch of people.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
No, that's crazy though. But like the other principle behind that is simply putting your back up against the wall.
Right.
I mean, you I'm sure not consciously, but unconsciously, literally put yourself in a position to where it was like, this is life or death. Like, this is do or die.
Exactly.
I just rented my house. I just, convinced my wife to move into a little teeny place. I'm riding my bike. I've got people I need to pay. I have no money in my bank account. I have to win. You burnt the boats. Like, that is entrepreneurship. That's the journey. And, since then you've made multiple of those moves. Even the story of Solcius, the story of Invictus. For those that are listening to this, tell us a little bit about when you went from Pinnacle Solar to Invictus and that whole little transition. What was going through your head?
Well, I think that the first thing, even to get to that transition, is another thing that entrepreneurs and people or business owners will go through. So that business that I started, it was called Cash Marketing Alliance, and where we were selling for Wyndham. After 2 years of running it, where I doubled my revenue and doubled again, that led to 2008. And if you remember, that was when the big credit crunch and the financial crisis happened. And I get a phone call out overnight, and Wyndham tells me, hey, we're closing down 98% of our offices that you're booking tours to.
Wow.
I mean, can you imagine if you're a Vivint or a Legacy or one of these companies that are out there, and all of a sudden Sunrun comes to Legacy and says, "Hey, Legacy, sorry, we're closing down 98 of the offices that you have. Now you have two to choose from." That's very challenging for a company. And so what entrepreneurs can do is they can either moan and, "Oh, what do I do?" Or you can adjust, you can shift and make it work. So I had to make an adjustment. And I remember being nervous. I was at dinner with my wife, and all of a sudden just this feeling popped into my head. Called John Frampton. John Frampton was a friend that I'd grown up with, and he was at Pinnacle Security.
It's funny, you guys are both speaking at Door to Door Con. That full circle.
Well, we grew up literally just a block away from each other, so know him
Davis
very
County,
well.
they pump out some studs.
That's right. Viewmont High, baby. Anyway, so I just had that feeling, just call John, because I knew he was at Pinnacle. He had just gone from Platinum to Pinnacle, and I had all these sales guys that were very good, and I'd actually started a door-to-door program for my company as well. It just wasn't all over the phone. And I said, "John, I've got a lot of sales guys. I really am looking for a home because of what has happened with Wyndham." And he's like, "Yeah, bring them to Pinnacle." And now I understand the game a little more. He's like,
didn't even understand.
"Are you serious? Yeah, let's get them down there."
Can I take them out to lunch? I'll buy them all dinner.
Yeah. Didn't understand that game. So I was very grateful that there was a company willing to help me out and help all these guys that I had really spent a lot of time with. So I go down to Pinnacle, and all of those guys went into security. And then Pinnacle came to me, and they're like, "Geez, you really know how to recruit locals and recruit a team. We want to start a new division of our company that we're going to sell this new internet product. It's 4G internet. It was the first time it was coming out. Nobody had heard of it." And I was like, I'd heard of it. It was called WiMAX at the time, and I thought, yes, let's do this. So I became the vice president of Pinnacle's new launch division that most of the Pinnacle regionals, VPs knew nothing about. It was kind of the side project. It sounds fancy, but literally what it meant is
Go try new things.
Go try new things on your own with no support. That's exactly what it was. But I think they knew I was an entrepreneur, and so that was my skill set. So what they asked me to do was to move to Portland, Oregon and I took my wife up there. First I went up for a month by myself, and then I took my wife and my kids. Now we have 3 kids at this time, up to Portland, Oregon. And I just started putting out ads and hiring locals. I tried to find a little office that I could work out of and an admin that I could work with. And little by little, we grew the Clear division. That was really my first, I'd say, my experience with door-to-door after a Mormon mission and knocking doors. And I can remember going out and knocking, Sam, and I was scared to death. I was confident that I could do it, but I was out knocking and I just fell on my face, like just horribly. I was probably, the first 2 days of no. And people would always say to me, like, "You were so nice, you're kind."
You were just a good presenter. You were just a cuddly, I love it.
But no, we're not interested, right?
Yeah, like, that's fine. Yeah. I can see you. You're just like, oh, I'm sorry to bug you. You're too nice. I love it.
That's pretty much what it was. Well, so I'm 2 days into this, and I had another guy that I was training because I'm the man.
Yeah,
I'm the
you're
boss.
The new guy too.
I'm the new
we're
guy.
both new at this. What do you think? Maybe you try.
So again, just courage. Let's go. I said, I'm going to train you. I'm going to show you how to go out and knock. And he's shadowing me. And I knock a door, and I just completely fell on my pitch. It was so bad. And the guy, happened to be a gamer. This is 4G internet. He's like, "Well, if it's fast internet, I'm probably interested. Come on in." I was like, "Whoa!" I just got in the house, and it ended up being a pretty easy sell.
Lay down.
It was a lay down sell. It was my first sell, and immediately what switched in me is that I can actually do this. This is something that can work. And what changed is then I went out and I started knocking. And I started saying in the back of my mind, just assume the sell. And rather than always, and I was still extremely kind and nice, but I just assumed that the homeowner was going to go to the next step, right? And you know these principles.
Yeah.
And what it did is took all the vocabulary out of my mind, all the bad things that we say as salesmen.
No words, yeah.
The no words, like it's going to be okay, don't, and all that kind of stuff. And assume the sell, and I was able to start just selling almost every home that I went to from that point on, and I became the number one salesman of that office as the leader and the
Manager,
VP and the manager, and then it was just duplicate myself from one office to the next. We ended up launching 15 offices in about a year and a half and sold 45,000 customers for Pinnacle.
That's insane. Like,
with Clear.
That's in, like, a lot of people can't even comprehend how many accounts that is in a year and a half. Your first year and you being on your own little island, and it's like, oh, we're doing the security thing over here, but good luck. And then all of a sudden they probably look at the books and they're like, wait a minute, this guy, where did he come from? That's got to be awesome.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what you did to duplicate, because there's so many people that's their goal, is it's to take one office, get it rolling, self-sufficient, move, new office, rolling, self-sufficient, and that's like the fifth level of leadership is developing leaders upon leaders, right?
Yeah.
So what do you feel like attributed to your skill set of being able to duplicate and create such fast offices that were actually functioning?
Well, first I knew I had to lead by example. I had to be the number one salesman in that office, because people aren't going to follow anybody if they really don't believe that they can do it themselves. So when I went to Portland, that's exactly what I did. I became the number one salesman, and then I had people that I recruited that would come out and shadow me. I went to Dallas, Texas. I quickly became the number one salesman. But the other thing that I started doing is, the internet, social media. At that time, social media wasn't big, by the way. But all of these ways to recruit were powerful. So I started creating events for my recruitment. So I would put out a link to it was called Constant Contact. You probably heard of that, where I'd put out a link on Constant Contact, and I would put it out on Craigslist, and I'd say, come to this hiring event and learn what this new 4G internet is all about. And I would put that link out on ads, usually 2, 3, sometimes 4 times a day, running 2 events a day. And my goal was to get 15 to 30 people in a room. I would do a presentation about the opportunity to come and work for me and what I was doing. And then I would try to hire at least half of those people. And the other thing that I really learned is I tried as much as I could during that presentation at first to talk about how awesome the opportunity was. And then in the second half, really talk about how hard door-to-door is.
Set the expectation.
And my goal was literally to push out all the pretenders, those guys that weren't very serious. And I wanted those people that were serious. They wanted to give it their full effort to stick with me. And I was okay if I went into a room of, say, 45 and only 5 to 10 decided that they wanted to stay and work with our office. Because then I knew those 5 to 10 were going to be the studs. Those were going to be the guys or the girls that were going to stick with it. And I just continued to do those events, though, every day. I was consistent on my ads that were going out. And I would have an office of, say, 30, 40 people in crazy. 2 weeks, in a week. And I was able to do that in Portland and also in Dallas.
Focus on training
Houston.
them and focusing on finding out who's the leadership.
Right. And then the goal was training them, getting them out, getting them selling, and then finding out who's going to be that person that was going to replace me, and start grooming that person early on, and then have that person step into that leadership role. So then I could go to the next city and do the same thing.
What attributes would you look for in the person that you were like, okay, he's my guy? Like, what were the main attributes you'd look for?
Well, number one, who's selling the most accounts is the first and easiest one, because again, you got to follow somebody who actually knows how to do it. But that's not what it entirely is. It is also somebody who knows how to work well with other people, good communication skills, somebody who knows how to recruit, somebody who's motivating, those kinds of things. Really, I look for somebody who had done and could do what I've done.
Yeah.
Which is go start an office and go start something from scratch and continue to run it.
So what kind of conversations or things would you do to groom them? Like did you have some kind of leadership development set up, or did you have some training books? Like what did you do to be like, okay, in a month and a half I need to somehow make you a manager. Let's go.
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
So my best conversations were always on the doors. That meant that when I was out knocking, I always had that leader, and that leader would come there with me, and he would be right there by my side. And we would spend hours and hours together. I'd be talking, grooming that person, making sure that he was getting all the skill set that I had. And then when we were going in and we were selling, teaching him how to do that. But then also training him along on that time on the doors. How do you recruit? How do you motivate people? How do you run a correlation meeting? All of those things.
So let's kind of shift gears. So you did the Clear division of Pinnacle. You did then all of a sudden you did solar. So same kind of thing. Hey, we're going to try this solar thing. We hear it's hot.
Yep.
A lot of people, you're like, for those listening to this that are in solar, I think Bryan, he's one of the oldest I've seen in solar. 2009?
2009, yeah.
So if you're watching this and you started before 2009, comment and make me a liar, please. But so many people are like, Vivint, and so many people are like, I don't know. It's so funny, but it's like, man, I lived in Fresno in high school, and I remember solar back then, and this was back in 2009. Yeah, it's like, this is when I was in like high school. I graduated in 08, but I was there, you know. Yeah. But it was a thing, and people don't realize that. They think like Vivint was the first to do door-to-door solar, but
no.
So you decide with Pinnacle, they actually kind of beat them to the punch, and you go out and tell us kind of how this just started, and then
I think to be fair, I think the first person that I'd heard of in kind of the door-to-door industry that got into solar was Tyson Peschke. And I think he had worked with Sunrun before he, went and helped launch Vivint Solar. It ended up being like a year and a half or 2 years later. But Pinnacle had heard about it, that it was getting big and or could be big. And so we decided that we were gonna launch a solar division. Again, me being the one who had launched their clear division, I was the guy to do it. And so we partnered with a company called Sunrun at that time, and I took literally 15 of my best guys from clear, and we went down to Southern California and partnered with Sunrun to start solar with Pinnacle. And people will laugh at this, being in if you're a solar dealer or whatever you're doing, that we were making about 30 cents a watt, and we thought that was great.
As a dealership, like the whole program.
As a dealership for Sunrun, 30 cents a watt, and we were selling at $6 a watt. So we were.
So we shouldn't feel bad if we're selling it at $4.50 or something now. They're still getting a better deal.
Yeah, but and again, it was brand new. They really hadn't done door-to-door solar sales, and it was just go and figure out a pitch. So those guys and we went down, and again, I knew if we're going to be successful, I had to be the number one salesman, which I ended up. I think we've talked about. I've sold over 1,000 solar accounts.
It's insane.
Doing that, but I went out and just started pounding the doors, and we really set it up as a setter-closer model, but you were setting appointments for yourself. So I'd go out and knock the door, gain the interest of the homeowner, and set an appointment that I could come back at a later time and end up going and closing them on a solar account. And in about 5 months' time, those 15 guys and I, with another leader, we sold about 700 solar accounts. We crushed it. We had some challenges. I think, part of those challenges were that the industry in itself was evolving at that time. It was brand new. So like a site survey, for instance, these terms, but a site survey took 2.5 weeks from the time we had somebody sign the paperwork. And it was paperwork. Nothing was electronic, by the way. To check credit, we filled out a paper application and we submitted it into Sunrun, and we'd find out usually about 3 to 4 days later if they passed credit or not.
That's crazy. So the people that complain about operations now, you're kind of like, come on guys. Remember when I had it?
Yeah,
that's funny.
So and then the average install timeline was about 6 months for them to get installed, sometimes 7 months, and it was about a year after they signed up, but they actually had their system turned on.
That's
was kind of the timelines that we worked through. So as you can imagine, we had some attrition, we had some cancellations. I remember getting phone calls from angry customers saying, "Hey, it's been 4 months and I'm, what's going on with my account?" And we would call up and to try to figure out what's going on, and they would say something to the effect of, "Hey, we canceled that account because we reached out to do a site survey and the homeowner didn't call us back."
You're like, call again, you idiot.
Or we called out to try to inform them about their permit, and we needed this signature, and they never let us know, so we just canceled the account.
That's crazy.
But, so it was a brand new industry. We worked like crazy, but again, when you come up against those times where things aren't going exactly right as an entrepreneur, you can either throw in the towel, call it quits, or you can evolve. And so that's where Invictus really started from. My first solar gig is that we saw that there was nobody out there that could really do it, fulfill at the level that we needed this fulfilled at. And we were partnered with the largest installation companies in the country, companies like REC Solar and Peterson Dean. And, we decided ultimately, if we were going to make this successful on the level that salesmen are used to from coming from Utah, we had to do the fulfillment ourselves. And so we started Invictus, and then later that moved into Solcius, in which I'm the president now today.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about the do's and the don'ts of entrepreneurship, because now Solcius is probably valued at what, 100, 200 million? I don't know.
Yeah.
Over.
Yeah, I mean, we're
it's like a
doing very well.
Yeah, it's like multi-million dollar company, and I mean they do. What do we do? Like 250 installs a month, 300 installs a month.
Yeah.
That's
and
a lot.
I think the do's and the don'ts. What I have seen is, as part of Solcius, for the most part, we've been a dealer program. That's how we started. We wanted to take companies and give them the same opportunity that I had when I started with first Pinnacle's Solar division and then Invictus, was to start your own business and then have a fulfillment company that's going to take care of all the back end for you. And I've seen dealers come in that have been successful, and then I've seen dealers that have failed. Usually the ones that are successful are, they maybe start with one or two guys, and those two individuals quickly get out on the doors and they start selling.
Yeah, because a lot of people, they start their own dealership and so, I can just go hire a bunch of people and sit back and make money.
Yep.
It's like,
no. You first, to be the leader, people want to follow somebody who knows what they're talking about and knows what they're doing. And so if they'll go out and they'll start selling and they'll start bringing accounts in and start bringing revenue in and then slowly hiring, that's where I've seen that dealers have become the most successful. Most of them that fall on their face, they say, okay, what's my company name going to be? Because I got to build up a brand so people know who I am. So they go out and they think for a while and they come up with a really catchy, cool company name.
Oh, I've seen some cool ones.
And then they're like, okay, now I got to create my website. So then they spend the next 3 months creating their website or whatever it is. Now I've got to create these brochures. Then I start hiring people, and then I'm just going to go ask them to go and sell. Sam, I've literally seen dealers spend 6 to 8 months trying to build up a brand before selling one account. And by the time they're that far along the path,
like, this just isn't working for me.
It doesn't work. They're out of money, right? And you can't make a living if you're not having revenue come in. Whereas we've had dealers for our company that are doing millions and millions and millions of dollars in revenue. We have one particular dealer that I was talking to you about that I know he personally is making 7 figures a year in his pocket that he's taking home.
Crazy.
And the way that he did that is he started with 2 guys. And he went out and he started selling and then started recruiting. And first, him being the leader and bringing in that revenue for the company. And now he's doing where he personally is just one dealership, is doing 200 to 300 accounts a month every month. Just him, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So
what do you think that if you were to say new person starting their own business in door-to-door sales, what other advice, other than just like getting out there and creating revenue, like what are some of the things that you find also help, like some other points?
For me, it's always been working on yourself just as hard as you work on, going out on the, say, selling and on the doors. Working on yourself, reading good books. I know you and I both talk about this, and I've done meditation, I've done development, personal development work and all that. So you've always got to continually be sharpening your own saw. So I have a routine that every morning, and I've been very consistent with this. I'm usually up by about 4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, every morning. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to make sure I go and I get a good workout in. And so to get a good workout in, we good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. To get a good workout in, I love putting on the headphones. And where most people are jamming to music and that, I'm jamming to an audiobook. Or I'm jamming to a Tony Robbins podcast. I've listened to a few of your podcasts in the mornings as I'm doing my workouts, because I just want to have that early morning education and motivation that's going to help me throughout the entire day. So once I finish that, then I go out and I make sure that I plan my day. I do my morning affirmations, and then I typically, I drive 2 hours down to the office at Solcius. I live up in Eden. I never make that drive without having some kind of content that's good content that I'm listening to on the way. So I see a 2-hour drive a lot of times as a blessing, because I'm using that as education time. And So a good leader, other than just going out and pushing and slaying it on the doors and working hard, leading by example, is that you also have to be working on yourself just as hard, if not harder, investing in yourself so that you can be that capable leader.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people fail to consume new content to deliver to their people as well. Like, I've seen leaders that literally say the same quotes over and over and over again and the same lesson, and it's like, you've given that correlation 20 times. It's like, come up with something new, man.
Yeah.
And the only way to like keep your brain fresh is by consuming, taking notes, keeping track of, oh, that would be a good value add for my people. That would be a good nugget that I could apply maybe in my sale or whatever. But I feel like a lot of people, they get stagnant, and then that creates stagnantivity. What's the word for that? I didn't know the word. Stagnation.
They're stagnant. We'll just leave it at that.
It creates stagnation in their business. And
Yep.
I think personal development is something that, we both value a ton, but it's like, I think people undervalue like the impact that it makes for their own business.
Yeah. And it's creating that balance in life too. And if you're going to be able to do something like door-to-door sales, or you're going to become a very successful entrepreneur, you want to have some kind of balance in life, because you will burn out quickly. And so, the areas in my life that I always try to continually work on and try to keep balanced are, number one, I want to make sure that my relationships in my family, my wife and my kids, that's on point. I'm also, as you know, I'm spiritual, and I want to make sure that is on point as well. So I see that whole relationship, spirituality, contribution, that's, if not, it's up there as the highest importance to me, and making sure that I'm working on that every single day and serving somebody in some kind of a way. That's what really, to me, brings lasting and true happiness. Second, I want to make sure that I'm physically fit, because if you don't feel good about yourself and, this vessel that we work in every single day, how can you go out and perform at a high level? Yeah. So you want to make sure that you're constantly working out, you're getting exercise, you're getting enough sleep, which a lot of people, especially in summer sales, man, they let themselves go, because they go out and they work all day, and then they go to sleep at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and they're eating way late, just junk at that time. Then they wake up late, and then they go out and they start working, and they forget about keeping that self balanced, that part of yourself balanced as well. So relationships, physical fitness has to be on point. Then we just talked about personal development and always keeping your mind sharp, reading good books, listening to good content, listening to podcasts, whatever it is that works for you. That's what I try to incorporate that into my life every single day as much as I possibly can. And then I also want to take time and meditate, calm the brain, slow down a little bit. You've gotten big into that, and I know you do that, how much that's helped you. Yeah. And that's also helped me. In my life too.
Who are the guys that you really like following in the meditation piece?
My very first guru, I guess if you want to call it, was Wayne Dyer. He's now passed away, but I really truly believe that Solcius is here today because of the content that I listened to with Wayne Dyer. It just happened to be at that time when I was out selling solar and struggling through those sunrun days. I listened to Wayne Dyer every single day. Wow. And I was practicing the things that he was teaching. And it was because of that I had the ideas to start working with, a gentleman like Kelly Walker, and to create a Solcius together and to form that relationship to make that work. So very important to have that aspect in your life as well.
Cool. So we've kind of got to wrap up. I've loved this time. This is fun. I've been like antsy and waiting to get this podcast in. So what one last question, and I do this with all the podcasts, is I always ask, if you were to give the whole door-to-door industry, everybody listening to this or watching this, one piece of advice, what would it be?
One piece of advice for the whole door-to-door industry.
And you could pick either like the leaders of it or reps. I mean, you can kind of pick who you want to cater that to.
I think the phrase that I would give is, if it's to be, it's up to me. And what I mean by that is that I've seen so many times people make up excuses that just completely hold them back, because everybody knows the phrase about excuses. You can be successful selling pest control, security, solar. Obviously, I have a lot of personal bias probably to solar, but there's several areas that you can be successful, but the way to be successful is to go out and really just give it your very best effort every day and not blame somebody else if something goes wrong. Just know that you always have complete control of your life.
Yeah.
You completely do. And if you will know that, knowing that, hey, that person didn't make that sell, or this number, we didn't hit this number, and you can internalize that and take ownership and say, well, that didn't happen because I didn't spend enough time with that person, or we didn't hit these numbers because I didn't put in this amount of energy or time with the team in this way, and you really take ownership of that. Or I didn't get 5 deals today because I just didn't put in the time myself, rather than blaming somebody else, which happens so often. So often. That's the best advice I can give. If it's to be, it's up to me.
I love that.
No matter what it is.
There's so many times where I can remember reps coming to me and being like, well, I didn't sell because you weren't like helping me and this. It's like, what do you mean? Like, you have a neighborhood, you have paperwork, like there's installers, like what's stopping you?
Yeah.
And they just push it off, and it's so sad because it's like you're never going to get anywhere without the motto, if it's to be, it's up to me.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yep.
So thank you so much for your time, Bryan. This is like such an honor, honestly, like